everybody, and welcome to Phil Jackson Was Right, the confusingly named Alabama basketball live video show. Wow, how about that Minnesota game on Saturday? Huh? Those, they didn't pull it out, but
Yeah.
3 players on 5, and you outscore them. Colin Sexton dropped 40, man. Whew.
And a nice bounce back last night.
Yeah.
I mean, just because they were so bad in the first half. I mean, they didn't play.
Yeah.
They were so bad defensively, and Colin had an off night shooting, and John Petty gets benched, and then to find a way to still I can't even do this.
In previous, under Anthony Grant, I don't think that Alabama team pulls that out. So it's
times are changing.
Yeah. Anyway, this is actually Pete Carroll was right. The confusingly named Alabama football show. Almost unfortunately at this point for but as always, it's Carter, Ben, and Mitch here to talk Alabama football with you. So obviously Saturday did not go the way we wanted, to say the least.
No.
And so for the first time since 2013, Alabama is sitting at home on the first weekend in December. But there's still a chance. All need to be big Horned Frogs fans this weekend. So, yeah, but a lot to talk about this week.
Yeah. I guess we'll probably save the playoff stuff for the end.
Yeah.
Although there's a lot to talk about with that, but probably wait till the end to talk about that and get into just get into Auburn. It sucked. They lost. I guess I wanted to open it up. Obviously, we're going to talk more specifically about offense and defense, and probably especially about offense. Couple general thoughts from the game. First general thought is the stuff that I tweeted about a couple days ago, which basically it stems from the fact that I don't buy the narrative that Auburn was demonstratively better than Alabama. And I think that that's a narrative that most people do buy, right? I feel like I see that in media. I feel like I see that with the way people have discussed the game, both in print and on TV and everything. And we'll get into the rankings later. But I also think that maybe the committee sees it that way too. And I look at, the stuff that they've said about the difference, right? Or the how close Alabama is to Ohio State. And I kind of think that, like Mitch, you had said in the chat that you think that Alabama is being penalized too much for this loss. And I think that the only way in which they would be penalized too much for this loss by the committee is if the committee believes that Auburn was demonstratively better than Alabama on that field on Saturday. I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, advanced stats bear that out. I mean, the two teams were basically dead even in yards per play and dead even in success rate, and I think Alabama was actually more explosive.
Yeah, I buy that.
And I think Auburn had better field position, but not significantly so. I mean, it was really, and this is not to say that, a lot of times when you throw out stats like that and you say, it was all this, and then you're basically making the argument that it was a fluke. We're not saying it was a fluke. Like Auburn made the play,
it wasn't,
and Alabama didn't. Like you can say like Auburn won and won by 2 scores, and say that it's not like they didn't blow Alabama out. They didn't. There's this idea, like you were talking about, that Auburn just handled Alabama. It's just the game was closer than it's just Auburn made plays when it counted and Alabama didn't. It's like a lot of you that follow me on Twitter know I'm a big tennis fan, and you can have a tennis, like say you've got a men's Grand Slam tennis match, which goes best of 5 sets. You can have a match that lasts just 3 sets, where one player sweeps the other, which is the shortest it can be. But they can be really tight matches where one player just gets a couple points in key areas to get a key break here and there. And that's really what it made me think of. It's just like, the score says that Auburn won decisively, but it wasn't it was just a play here and a play there. They did it when it mattered, not they whooped Alabama up and down the field. This was not 6-love, 6-1, 6-2. It was, 6-4, 7-5, 6-4. If any of you are know what I mean by that.
Yeah, maybe a tiebreaker in one of those stats.
Yeah.
I think that's such an important point, and I think, like, okay, so when I tweeted that stuff out, I knew that if that got retweeted a little bit and became popular, that some Auburn fans were going to see it, and that the Auburn fans were going to not be too thrilled with that, and that's exactly what happened. There was some Auburn fans that were like, "Oh, like can't take the L, sore loser, like accept it, they got whooped," so on and so forth. I mean, just the sort of the generic responses. Because I think that it was interpreted maybe as me saying that Auburn got lucky.
Yeah,
but I'm
or
not
that Auburn
saying
didn't
that Auburn
deserve to win.
Right. I'm not saying either of those things. I think I explicitly said that I'm not saying either of those things. They wouldn't win because of luck. They didn't not deserve to win. They made, like, these plays that the game turned on, and I highlighted, 5 specific plays during that 4-drive stretch in the third quarter where I thought the game really turned. They made those plays, and for that, they get credit for making those plays. But I think that when one team makes a disproportionate amount of those plays, even if they're not playing better as a whole, like for instance, Alabama was really good in the trenches on both sides of the ball. They were putting themselves in situations to be able to do what they want. I think at times more frequently than Auburn was putting themselves in positions to do what they want on individual plays. But sometimes plays get isolated to one particular player or one particular area, and the outcome of those plays, when it's isolated to that micro level, is not necessarily indicative of how the overall team is playing in that game.
Yeah, and just as plenty has been made about third down, and rightfully so, but it was when you're getting whooped up and down the field, you on defense, for instance, you don't consistently put the other team in third down, which the Alabama defense did, and then Auburn made plays to convert those third downs.
Exactly.
We'll
get into defense later, but they were great on standard downs. Alabama was so much better against the run than I thought they were going to be. I mean, they really played well against the run. And on offense, they were good on standard downs too, and they put themselves in a lot of manageable third downs.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say next, is that on, the third down conversions were bad, but it's not like they were all – it's not like it was all because they were 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11, stuff like that. Like those are times when you expect to get to not convert a lot of third downs. And in some ways that almost makes it more frustrating because you were in third and manageable and you still didn't convert. But it's just frustrating that this narrative, I don't know. Auburn won by 12 points and was in the lead almost the whole game. But that doesn't mean it was a blowout.
Like let me just as a matter of getting specific for 1 second. So Alabama goes up 14-10. At that point, it seems like they're the better team. They immediately get Auburn in a third down. I think it was like a 3rd and 4 or something. And Mack Wilson is robbing the middle of the field. Maybe not the best choice to be robbing the middle of the field considering his health situation. But he was. And he kind of slipped, it seemed like, when he was trying to jam Will Hastings, and Will Hastings got free and picked up the first down. So a very isolated individual play that wasn't made. Well, what happens if he makes that play? What happens if he kind of gets that jam on Hastings? If Alabama was getting pressure on the play, they force a punt, they're up 14-10, they're getting the ball back, they just roll down the field 79 yards on 5 plays. I think that game plays out pretty differently.
Yeah.
And if you can change just one play in a game and you say, wow, if that play had went Alabama's way, I think this game might have gone entirely different. If you can do that with just one relatively innocuous play, you cannot say that one team outclassed the other team. It just can't be.
Right.
And I'm not picking a play in like the first quarter, and I'm not saying, oh man, everything spiraled and they lost by 40 points. But man, if
Although
they had just
honestly, like as much as and you did a great job of highlighting all those plays on Twitter. Honestly, the one that haunts me is Saban not going for it on 4th down on the first drive.
well, that's so interesting because so my next sort of general big point about the game was going to be the total plays getting out of hand. This is a theme now. It happened in both games against Clemson. It happened yesterday. I don't know the exact total play, or yesterday, Saturday. It happened. I don't know the exact total play count, but it definitely happened. Well, the turning point for the plays getting out of hand happened very early, right? Auburn puts together, I don't know how many plays they ran on the first drive, maybe 8 or 9. Alabama did something very similar. Alabama had a 4th and inches across midfield, I think maybe at the 47 or something, with a nice sort of designed QB keep on 3rd and 3 by Jalen. It was 4th and inches. They didn't go for it. Auburn gets the ball back. They go 94 yards on probably like 15 plays or something. Yeah. And all of a sudden, they're way behind. They're down 7-0, and they're way behind on number of plays. And I think this is a great time to transition into a talk about the offense, because that's where the game really changed for the first time, right? When he didn't go for that. Yeah. So I guess my question to you guys is, obviously I think we all agree that he should have went for it, right?
Yep.
I think everybody agrees that he should have went for it. Is it even defensible though? Like, is his decision, can it be justified in any way?
I mean, like it's not the most, like there have been far more outrageous failures to go for it on 4th down. For me, a huge part of it is just that, like, I don't believe in, unless you just have absolutely zero confidence in your defensive ability to stop someone on a short field, and I don't know, you're up a bunch, obviously there are some circumstances, but like in the vast majority of circumstances, if it's 4th and 1 in plus territory, you go for it. It's just a matter of statistics. Like you're gonna get it most of the time. And coaches consistently underestimate the kind of the expected value of going for it, if you will. But so that would have been that would end up being Auburn's 2nd drive of the game, where after they punted, and you pinned them deep, and they had Auburn got a 1st down on its first drive, but Alabama had stopped them. And so I think it's understandable for Saban to think, well, let's pin them deep, and we stopped them on the last drive. Maybe they get some yards, but they're not going to, I don't think he expected them to go 90-something yards. It's not outrageous, but I do think it was the wrong decision.
Mitch, where do you come from?
I mean, same thing. What I thought was interesting, 2 things. So when Diggs went out to return that first punt, to me, it kind of signaled some level of aggression from Saban in this game, because
you're saying like Xavier Marks is just back there to fair catch the ball. Exactly. But if you're putting Trayvon Diggs back there, you're taking on a little bit of risk for possibly netting a big play. And Trayvon netted them a big play later in the game, not on a punt return, but on a kick return. So that sort of bore out in some.
And I think in some ways the 4th and 1 is another decision is that same type of decision. I mean, you can put somebody out there to quote unquote fair catch and just punt on 4th and 1, right, or you can go for it and try and make a big play. I don't know. And another thing I thought was interesting is he mentioned at the halftime interview, he mentioned that 4th and 1.
What did he say?
Yeah.
What did he say?
I don't remember verbatim, but it was really weird.
I'd be very curious if we could. I did not know this. I would be very curious.
I don't remember what he said, but I remember him saying something that made me think, oh, it's like he clearly regrets not going for it.
Well, the context was like we kind of like stopped ourselves or something on offense, and he mentioned that 4th and 1 as like an example of that, which was just really weird to me because I'm sure he made the call to not go for it.
Yeah,
right. It was not right. It was not anybody else's call. So that's an interesting point that you kind of see it as contradictory. I see it as contradictory too in a different sense. Saban's pretty aggressive on 4th downs, right?
Yeah.
Well, and they're
2 drives later he went for a 4th down.
Yeah.
at like a similar part of the field. This time they were down 7-0 instead of tied. But like,
They were
I think it was longer, right? Was it? What did you say, Mitch?
Yeah.
I think it was more plus territory. I mean, I think they were at like the 38 or 40. I think.
Well, it was right before the Jerry Jeudy touchdown.
Yeah.
But I think that was like a 4th and 2 or something.
It was longer. It was longer than the first one. Yeah.
Yeah, they were on the Auburn 39 at that point.
I mean, is it just like saying like, oh well, it's the first drive of the game, so we're sort of trying to still feel our way into the game, and as a matter of principle, I don't like to be too aggressive on the first drive of the game. Like, is that it? Like, what was he thinking? Carter's point. So Carter, I think your point is sort of like, well, we played pretty good defense on the first series. We trust our defense in this matchup. We're gonna punt the ball deep. We're gonna pin them. We're gonna get a stop, and then we're gonna get great field position again.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, what he was thinking. But
I think that probably has to be what the thinking was.
Yeah. The other part of it that frustrates me is, last week we sat here and we talked about the fact that we thought that Alabama was particularly well equipped to make short yardage plays against Auburn. First of all, because it is a lot because when you have a really good QB run game,
yep,
you're very dangerous in short yardage. And also, as good as the Auburn front is, they don't make a lot of stuffs, right? They're not that's the one area in which they struggle is stuff rate. So you have, on one hand, you have an offense that is really good in short yardage situations because of the quarterback. And on the other hand, you have a defense that does not get a lot of stuffs. So I don't really get it. I don't understand. There's been so few times where I've been like, man, like Saban really screwed up. Because a lot of times I'll disagree with something he did maybe, but I won't see it as egregious because I'll see that there's like a very legitimate other side to the coin.
Yeah.
But in this case, I don't think that there's a very legitimate other side to the coin. I think that was just like a screw up. Like he just said like, well, it's the first drive. He just shrugged and said, well, it's the first drive, so I guess we should punt. Well, no, you should have went for it. It's frustrating. So from there, I don't know. Before we get into more specifics, what was your guys' general impression of the offense? Obviously, there's a lot of sub issues to get into. There's the quarterback play and the passing game as a whole. There's play calling. But, like, what was your guys' general impressions of the offense? They only scored 14 points. So, like, obviously, from a result standpoint, it's not great.
Yeah.
But in terms of how they functioned on a play-to-play basis, was it in line with your expectations? Did it exceed your expectations? Was it a disappointment?
I would say in line with a handful of kind of uncharacteristic drive stoppers.
Right.
Yeah, it's like it's not that the performance on the whole was bad so much as it was just like every time they needed something critical, they kind of screwed it up.
Yeah. I wanted to get in, so Mitch, you specifically mentioned drive stoppers. I wanted to just really quickly run down the drive stoppers, just because you called them uncharacteristic mistakes. I could not agree more with that assessment. Discounting the final sort of Hail Mary play to Cam Sims, Alabama had 10 drives in this game. The first drive, the drive ends when Jalen gets stopped short in plus territory, and then Saban doesn't go for it. We have talked about that a lot already. The second drive, Alabama is across the 50. They have a 1st and 10. They hit a little screen to Bo for 7 yards or 8 yards, and Jonah makes just a ridiculous decision to dive at the guy's legs when the guy wasn't even in the play. He was behind the play.
Yeah.
There was nothing to be gained by doing that. So Jonah by himself turned it turned like a 2nd and 2 or a 2nd and 3 from, I think, inside the 40 to a 1st and 25 from Alabama territory. Then 2 plays later, Jalen fumbled.
Yep.
The third drive, Alabama got pinned deep. They Auburn put him in like a 3rd and 6, and Jalen got flushed out of the pocket and he threw it away. That was the first time where Auburn really legitimately stopped Alabama.
Yeah.
Like they just sort of outplayed them. The next drive, Alabama scored the touchdown. Their first touchdown. The 5th drive was I think a play that was kind of overlooked. This was Alabama's last drive of the first half. They had, I think, a 3rd and 6 or 3rd and 5.
3rd and 4.
3rd and 4 from maybe their own 20 or something, I want to say.
Yeah.
They changed the play at the line because they saw that guys were isolated at the receivers. They ran a little rub fade to Ridley from the slot. It was like a little wheel route. Jalen made a good throw, and Calvin dropped it. Like the defender, Calvin adjusted to the ball. The defender did not adjust to the ball. It should have been kind of a gimme for Calvin. It's a play he makes all the time. He didn't make it. So Alabama, instead of moving the ball, stalled, had to punt the ball to Auburn, and then Auburn got 3 points to go up 10-7. Then out of the half, Alabama marches down and scores a touchdown to go up 14-10. Then the next drive was they get into a 3rd and manageable, 3rd and 4. They throw that pretty well-schemed play out to Bo in the flat, and Bo just doesn't get to the marker.
Yeah.
Like, he just didn't make the play. The defender made a great play, so, like, for sure.
Yeah. Great individual open field tackle on a back as big as Bo is. But, I saw that play. The moment I saw the play developing, I was like, I've got this.
Me too.
And
the second he throws it.
Yeah, Bo's got the ball in his hands, and I see the defender coming in, and I was like, "There's no way he stops him." And
no, Bo had the angle. Bo had the angle to the sideline to get the first down, or he could have, if he anticipated the defender coming, he had the option to kind of stop and cut back, and that could have been a huge play if he had done that. He didn't do either, and he just sort of got tackled. So that was the 7th drive. Then on the 8th drive was after the big kick return by Trayvon Diggs. And Jonah's missed block on that screen to Josh Jacobs turned a first down inside the 20 into a 3rd and 3, and then a delay of game penalty, and then an incompletion, and then a botched snap on the field goal stalled that drive. Then on the 9th drive was the play after all the craziness with the snaps and the review and the kind of weird decision where they could only call one penalty, but they couldn't call the other penalty. That drive stalled when Robert Foster just didn't get enough depth on his little crossing route, and then didn't just fall backwards for the first down after catching the ball. So that was the 9th drive. And then on the 10th drive, they were just in a mess. They were just throwing all over the place. They had a 4th and 22, and Jalen was running all over the place, crossed the line of scrimmage, and overthrew an actually wide open Irv Smith for what would have been a first down. But it's 4th and 22, and so what are you going to do? But I guess my point in bringing all that up is that, did the offense play great? No, they didn't play great. But they weren't just like when they played against Clemson last year, would they have like 7 3-and-outs in a row in the second half at one point? This was not like that at all.
No. Clemson was stopping them last year.
Right.
This against Auburn, they stopped themselves.
Yeah.
Almost every time.
Right. The one matchup where they consistently lost, which is a matchup that we were concerned about going in, was Jeff Holland against Matt Womack. They consistently lost that matchup, but that wasn't enough to be determinative. Alabama still was winning plenty of other matchups, enough matchups to move the ball consistently. Alabama should have scored well into the 20s in this game, maybe possibly even breaking 30.
Yeah.
And it's also like some of their best players, right? Two of those drives were stalled out because of Jonah's mistakes. Jonah's far and away their best offensive lineman. He's probably one of their 2 or 3 best offensive players in general. One of them is Bo, who's one of your really good players not making a play. One of them is Calvin, who's your best player on the whole team, dropping the ball. I mean, these are just random, isolated, uncharacteristic errors that held Alabama back. I don't know when the last time we saw something like this.
Evil in that stadium.
Yeah, maybe it is, And this is not this is not Auburn luck, because this is just Alabama guys just not making plays. These aren't tip passes going for 75 yards. These aren't 109-yard missed field goals returned for touchdowns. But so the Alabama players deserve the blame for this. And in contrast, the Auburn players didn't make those mistakes, so they deserve the credit because they won the game. But like, even in this loss, I feel like Alabama was very much in control of their own destiny in this game, so to speak. They authored their own fate. They didn't make the plays that were there to be made. And Deron Payne said after the game, they asked him, and guys say this all the time, but they asked Deron Payne, did the better team win? And Deron Payne said, no. We just made mistakes.
Yep.
And I agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree. I'm so frustrated because, like, yeah, this game was right there for them, man. Last year, Clemson took it from Alabama.
Yeah.
They took it. They took advantage of a quarterback who wasn't ready and an offense that wasn't ready for that game. And on the other hand, they had the best player in the whole country, and they played amazing. But that was not what happened here. It just wasn't. It wasn't, and it sucks.
Yeah.
I've been talking too much. You guys say something about the offense.
It's just my growing conviction that if they don't get into the playoff, this is going to be like the one that got away. Like, because I have so much confidence that this team playing fully healthy and angry in the playoffs, would and could win the whole thing. And as we'll talk about later, it pretty much seems like unless TCU upsets Oklahoma on Saturday afternoon, they're not going to get in. So, but again, like I said, the upshot is, like I said on Twitter, which this one has proven to be very popular. I can't wait for 20. If they don't make it, then I will be so excited for the 2018 season because I expect the whole team to just play like their hair's on fire the whole season.
Tour. Yeah. Okay, I want a couple other points about the offense. Two people very much under fire after this game. Our offensive coordinator and our quarterback. And when I say our quarterback, I mean by extension just the passing game as a whole.
Yeah.
Why did the passing game fail us? Again, for another time where it was an evenly matched game and same thing against Clemson, right? In the two games, they hit big plays against Clemson in the passing game. Usually to O.J. Howard, or almost always to O.J. Howard. But one deep shot to Ardarius Stewart, I guess, in the first national championship against Clemson. That wasn't a touchdown, but that put him in field goal range. But other than that, other than those big plays, and in this game they had the big play to Judy, right? But other than that, they didn't really do anything.
They had a few would-be big plays that were taken down by Auburn.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah, they probably got 50 yards taken away from them because of penalties.
Well, I think the second one, which was at 20-14, probably would have been a touchdown if the guy didn't drag him down. The first one was more on Alabama, though, because I thought that on the first one, the only reason why the guy had an opportunity to interfere with the ball was that it was kind of underthrow, or to interfere with Jalen, or to interfere with Calvin was that the ball was underthrown a little bit. But still, though, right? Even if you give them those plays, those are still just big plays.
Right.
Okay. And we talked about how we thought big plays were going to be a difference maker and should be a focal point of the game plan. But why can't they get anything in the intermediate game?
Yeah.
Why is that not a thing? It's never a thing.
Yeah. Well, I would say part of it is that you have one superstar receiver who did not have a great game.
Yeah.
And then you have two seniors who are maybe not the most talented guy in Cam Sims and extremely unreliable in Robert Foster. Yeah. And then you have three freshmen. And, kind of aside from the long one to Judy, the receivers didn't really make plays in this game is part of the problem. Look, there's no skirting around the fact that Jalen had a bad game. Like, I mean, we've been, you know, kind of his biggest defenders at times on this show. He was not good. There's no question that his struggles contributed to this loss a fair amount. And I don't know. I don't know that there's a whole lot more to say about it.
Who do we think is our second best playmaking wide receiver?
Gotta be Judy or Devontae, right?
Yeah. So we saw Judy a little bit. How much did we even see of Devontae?
I don't know. Mitch, I know you texted us during the game and you said that you thought that Robert Foster and Cam Sames were getting too many snaps on passing downs. When I rewatched it, I didn't like chart that out. Certainly, like on those, certainly on those some of those drives late in the game, right, where it was throw, those guys were on the field. Sims and Foster were on the field, and Foster was on the field for the most important play in the fourth quarter where he didn't make the play. So, you know, maybe that was part of the problem. Maybe they didn't really fully integrate those guys into the offense to the point where they were going to get enough snaps at the right times. I don't know if I don't know. Like that's kind of hard to say. I'm really speaking in like super big generalities here. But like I think that's a fair point though. I don't know even how many times those guys got targeted or anything. It certainly seemed like Alabama was trying to take deep shots. They threw a number of deep balls. It seemed like there were other plays. It's hard to know without the coach's film, but it seems like there were other plays where the objective was to try to hit a deep shot, and it wasn't there. We wanted that. At least I wanted that.
Yeah.
Credit to Auburn, though, right? I mean, they seemed like they kind of got on top of those routes.
Yeah.
Jalen also made like some uncharacteristic game managing mistakes, right?
Yeah, some mistakes that he doesn't normally make. Like we all know that he's not the most advanced passer out there. Like you don't expect him to go out there and wing the ball around on every single, you know, NFL route and you know, do stuff like that. But he also like there was one play where he I don't know, it was like a 2nd and long or something like that. And he rolled, you know, he got flushed out of the pocket and he was rolling and looking and eventually just stepped out of bounds and lost like 4 yards and had such an easy opportunity to just throw the ball away. And I was like, why throw the ball away?
Yeah. Which he usually is pretty good at.
Yeah. And it was just so, like, I don't know what he was doing. Like, he does that almost every time. And I don't know why he didn't do it on that play.
And then that weird delay of game penalty that he took. And I mean, I saw people blaming the coach, blaming Saban for not calling a timeout. And like, yeah, he could have called the timeout, but at the same time, like Jalen wasn't rushed. They had the play in. They weren't trying to make any adjustments at the line. Jalen has the play clock right in front of him. I think Saban, like, yeah, he could have called the timeout, but he had every reason to believe that Jalen was going to snap that ball on time, and Jalen just didn't snap the ball on time. Maybe it wasn't all him. Maybe it was a communication issue with him and Bozeman, a function of the noise, something. But for whatever reason, like the center quarterback exchange did not happen in time, and I have no idea why.
And speaking of snaps,
that didn't go so well.
What happened? Twice in a row. What was Bo clapping for? What were they doing? What happened?
Yeah. Do we think Bo was clapping?
They looked like Tennessee out there, man.
Do we think they were trying to get the snap in for the 12th man? I mean, is that
would be
why
funny.
we think he was?
That would be very heads up.
The second one was on purpose, you think?
Yeah, no, I kind of did. I mean,
but they said they weren't even set though, right?
Well, they weren't. Yeah, but
like they should have had a penalty. Was not legal what they did.
Yeah, it was only not offsetting penalties because of because it was they did the penalty on review.
Because they just the official. I think the reason why the officials didn't throw a penalty on Alabama on that was because they weren't ready for Alabama to snap the ball.
Yeah.
It was just as surprised as any of us that I mean Alabama was like they had just broken the huddle.
Yeah.
Or it was maybe like a sugar huddle or something. It wasn't like a full huddle, but like they had just started to move out to their positions, the skill players, and Bradley just snapped the ball. Now, so Saban talked after the game, right, about how they were going on, so because the noise, right, so they couldn't go with their normal cadence, so they were doing it by clapping. And Saban said something like, "Well, maybe we could have done it by lifting a leg too, but we didn't do that." Well, clapping is noise also. Right? What am I missing? Like, if the problem is that you can't hear, why would you do something else that involves having to hear?
I just have zero explanation for that whole sequence. I would love to get Saban, Bozeman, Jalen, and Bradley in a room and just be like, guys, what the fuck?
And Bo too. Bo needs to be a part of the conversation too, because I don't know what Bo's doing either. He's clapping and shit.
What's he clapping for? It's never his job to clap.
It's very funny. We can laugh about it, right? I mean, it's good. It's good to be able to laugh about things.
I mean, well, you ultimately can laugh about it because it was inconsequential, because the only thing that ultimately ended up stopping them on that drive was Robert Foster deciding to run a 2-yard route on a 4th and 3.
Right. Yeah, and then not like taking the first down.
Or not just falling that way instead of
And then that's the thing, right? In that situation, because if you run that route short of the sticks, you have to know that you ran that route short of the sticks. So when you catch the ball short of the sticks, your immediate priority has to be, get to the sticks.
Right. It's 4th down. Don't be a hero. Just make the first down.
Yeah.
My number one, one of my hugest pet peeves, and y'all know I've complained about this before, about like, it's like when guys like double clutch a kickoff in the end zone 8 yards deep and then decide to run it out. You're not going to get to the 25. Just take the 25.
Right.
And
or if you're going to do it, if you're going to do it.
Right.
Like, don't hesitate and like my other returner friend is putting up the stop sign. What should I do? Let me think about it for a half second and then go.
Yeah.
Go or don't go. But just do it.
And if you run a 2-yard route on a 4th and 3 and you catch the ball short of the sticks and there's a guy coming for you, don't try to juke him and get 10 yards when you could just fall forward and get the first down.
Yeah. Let me ask you guys this from just to stay on the passing game for a second. Clearly, we agree that for whatever reason, the intermediate passing game is somewhat underdeveloped, right? I mean, Auburn probably won this game because of the intermediate passing game, and that was something that like is not a strength of theirs. So clearly, like big games, intermediate passing game helps a whole hell of a lot.
Yep.
Is this something that this is like priority number 1 for Alabama going forward, right? It has
to be something that is 100% the focus of Dable and Jalen and the receivers over the offseason.
Yeah.
It's like they can't. Yeah, it's time to step up.
I mean, look. I mean, I know that this is like kind of like sacrilege on this podcast, but I would even admit that if they really feel that Tua is the guy to take the intermediate passing game forward and that Jalen has capped, then they have to seriously consider Tua, because it has to get better. Like it has to. It's kind of at a breaking point now. Like, the intermediate passing game has kind of to some extent now ruined consecutive very promising seasons. Last year it probably ruined what was the greatest defense Alabama will ever have and that we might ever see. And the year before it kind of almost ruined that season too, right? So Alabama is so good in so many areas, and they will continue to give themselves chances to win national championships year after year. But they cannot let this very specific thing hold them back, as it seems to be.
Yeah. And this is kind of exactly the situation I was talking about earlier in the year, where if you have Tua, getting experience every game, and you get to this point in the game, and you're like, our intermediate passing game is just not working with Jalen, you can just throw Tua out there and
let's just talk about this really quick, because obviously this is for better or worse, this is the stuff that people want to hear and want to talk about. Let's assume Alabama doesn't make the playoffs. Let's assume they kind of play an uneventful bowl game against who knows. Should the quarterback position be open going into spring ball?
Shouldn't every position be? I mean, I'm kind of under the impression that every position should be open.
Okay, but put a percentage on it though. Like, is it a 50-50 thing? Like, should it be a 50-50 thing, or should it be like a 75-25 thing? Like, how much of the I mean, I'm not articulating this well, but I think you guys probably know what I'm trying to say.
How open is open?
Yeah,
I wish I had something to evaluate Tua on other than
they're just like the problem. I think the problem you have all along is that, and part of my big problem with the whole Tua situation is that
people seem convinced of his greatness for
right. It's not like if Tua if he's better, then play him.
Right.
Play the guy who's better.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people they have this assumption that because you've seen him throw some strikes in garbage time.
Yeah.
That he's better, that the offense would just be better. It's like, okay, like, sure, you like.
I don't doubt that Tua is like really talented and that like Tua has a chance to be a really good quarterback. But I agree that like a lot of the criticisms of Jalen seem to be couched in this assumption that Tua would be awesome if he played, or even couched in the assumption that Tua would be better than Jalen if he played.
Yeah.
And you're not getting that from anywhere. You don't know that at all.
There was. All right, go.
No, you go.
I was just gonna say there's like, given all this that we talked about, there still wasn't one point in the game where I felt like I wanted to see Tua out there.
No, that's a really good point. That's a really, really good point. I totally agree with that. As much as I felt that Jalen was struggling, I never felt that Tua was the answer yesterday. Now, if Tua had gotten more playing time earlier in the year, I might have felt differently. But I've seen people advocating advocating at the time and after the fact that Tua should have come in for Jalen in that game. No. That's a bad idea.
And I don't even think I don't like. If they somehow make the playoff and have bowl prep, I don't even like.
No,
I don't even want to see him like play in the bowl game all that much, unless it just gets really dramatic. But
Jalen deserves the bowl game. We don't have any answers on this, like, but nobody does.
Right?
Does he get a little tunnel vision with Calvin?
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, Carter's made the point that, well, Calvin's awesome, so he should. But he probably does it to a fault at times. I don't agree with that.
Does that make the intermediate passing game tough? Because know that he's just going to lock in on – you just know you have to make sure Calvin doesn't get open. And by the time he's looking to his second or third receiver, Pollard's in the backfield.
I don't doubt that it has an impact, yeah.
I think that Auburn played the type of coverage that's going to give Jalen the most trouble, which is just like rush 4 and play zones behind it, and like make him go through his progressions, bracket Calvin, make him come to other guys. Jalen is not perfect as a quarterback. He's very far from it. He's still underdeveloped as a passer. I think we've all seen him make strides this year, but he still has a long way to go, and maybe
I do think it's worth making the point that, first of all, he's 19 years old. He turned 19 in August. When A.J. McCarron was his age, A.J. McCarron was redshirting.
Right.
He was a true freshman in the middle of a redshirt season when he was Jalen's age. Second, they didn't, and Saban said as much, and said that this was of the coaching staff, that he comes in and isn't taking starters reps basically until, after the USC game, after he kind of wins the job. And at that point, I haven't gone back and watched his high school tape or anything. I would not presume that he was in a particularly pass-heavy or sophisticated passing offense in high school.
Yeah.
So he's basically coming in cold as a passer. And he's won the job because the other guys aren't steady enough and because his his poise and his athletic ability gives him the best chance to win.
Right.
So they cobbled together this spread option offense on the fly that's focused on the running game, where the passing is just sort of purely complementary and almost entirely behind the line of scrimmage. This is kind of his first year, maybe ever, at age 19, being asked to really be a true downfield passer.
Yeah.
And so I think people just look in and say, oh, this is his second year as a starter, and he was there at spring practice as a freshman, and make this presumption that there is something wrong with him, that he's not farther along than he is. And I think that's an incredibly unfair assumption to make. And frankly, I think there's a lot of built-in racism in that people are looking at him as an African-American quarterback and doubting his ability to grow as a passer in large part of that. I'm not saying, because I know there are people that will react to this way, that I'm not saying that people are like, well, he's black, he can't be a good quarterback, but that question the assumptions that you make about a player and ask whether things that you're not thinking about consciously are informing those assumptions.
Yeah. And I think that's an important point, because we would agree that Jalen is not a great passer right now, but why do people seem convinced that he can't get better? There seems to be this assumption that he's not going to improve, so he can't be the guy.
Would you say that as a redshirt sophomore in 2011, his first year as a starter, that A.J. McCarron was a better passer than Jalen is now?
I mean, God, think about the LSU game, the regular season game.
Don't think about A.J. McCarron in 2012 and 2013. Think about he did nothing that year as a passer
he was
until
bad
the national championship game.
Yeah. They got him some wide open shots on balls downfield in some of these games, but that's more a testament to the offense than it is to AJ. Yeah, I agree. AJ,
he was, because AJ is actually exactly 1 week younger than I am. That was my junior year of college, his redshirt sophomore year. He turned 21 at the beginning of that season. He was literally 2 years older than Jalen is right now, his first year as a starter.
And that's all he had ever been, was a pocket passer. That was like a skill set.
Right, that was his thing.
He was in college for it.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. AJ had some games that year where he was terrible. The LSU game, the Mississippi State game.
Yep.
I mean, he was really bad. And then he was okay against Auburn. They got him some wide open touchdowns, I think, quickly, Kenny Bell deep on a flea flicker.
Oh, yeah. That game was a blowout anyway.
And that game was a blowout. And then he played his ass off in the national championship.
Yeah.
I don't know where the hell that came from, but I'm very thankful for it. I don't know. We'll see. We're not going to sit here and defend Jalen for Saturday, because Jalen did not play well on Saturday. But the last thing that I would say is that the offense was still functioning.
Yeah.
And if other guys did a little bit better, they would have won that game with Jalen playing exactly the same.
Right.
Yep.
One more thing I wanted to talk about on the offense, because I guess this is the sort of the second big contention that people are bringing up, is the play calling. Alabama did not give the ball to their running backs much in the first half. Immediately in the second half, they gave the ball more to their running backs, and those running backs had a lot of success.
Yep.
What do we think about not giving the ball to the running backs in the first half?
I would ask when what plays did they want to see?
There's a very good point, right? Context is important here.
Like they did give the ball to him on some plays, and they came up short of first downs at times.
Yeah. And I think they're underestimating, and I think Cole Kublik has been consistently making this point all week, that when Alabama ran the ball between the tackles, they did not get much.
Yeah.
And the success that they had outside the tackles, which they did, they had a fair amount, was set up almost entirely by the quarterback run game. And this is something we talked about.
Yeah.
This is something we said, the alignments that Auburn's playing and the way their defense is, we wanted to see a lot of Jalen running. and thought that would set up the running backs, and it did.
It really did. Like, the plan worked kind of perfectly in a way.
Yeah.
Like, those series of plays that I talked about in those 4 drives after Alabama went up 14-10, what if a couple of those plays had gone differently, Alabama could have more fully established what was clearly their second half game plan.
If they just make those plays, they sustain. Auburn gets less plays. The lead doesn't grow as much. Alabama sustains more drives. The running backs do get more carries. It just.
I think the criticisms of Jalen, while flawed, very flawed, are way more legitimate than the criticisms of the play calling, because I thought the play calling worked.
Yeah,
it did.
Now there's other areas in which you can criticize the offensive staff from sort of a bigger picture standpoint, which is, why is the intermediate passing game still pretty underdeveloped? But that's a different complaint than the you called bad plays in this game and you didn't give the ball to the running backs enough. Now, it is kind of weird.
I just think, like, have Alabama fans ever liked an offensive coordinator?
That's a very good point as well. Yeah. I thought
they're always looking for someone to blame, and when running backs don't get 30 carries a game, that's like any time in which Alabama running backs get like less than 30 carries a game, fans are going to be upset.
See, here's how I look at this. They did in the first half, right? The plays that they called, should have netted them more than 7 points. It should have netted them at least 10 or 14 points. Yeah. And it also succeeded in setting them up really well for the second half, which would have played out a lot differently had a couple plays after they went up 14-10 gone their way. So, like, I thought the play calling put them in a position to win. They didn't win, but I don't think that they lost because of the play calling. I thought the plan worked.
Yep.
I thought you saw that it worked. Like, they came out in the second half. They got those points. Okay, then they ran it twice on the next drive. They ran it on first down. They got 5 yards. They ran it on second down. They got 1 yard. Well, you got to throw it then, right? And then when they got the ball back on the next possession, Jacobs had a couple more nice runs. They picked up a first down after the pass interference penalty. So, like, they were running the ball in the second half, and it was working really well, but there were still these little plays holding them back. If Bo gets that first down, I bet you they're going to run it some more. I bet you they're going to get the ball back on the perimeter, run it some more, probably have more success, probably go down and score points.
Yep.
It just didn't happen.
Yeah.
But I don't find the criticisms of the play calling legitimate at all. I do think people have pointed this out, that, like, Damian, for as effective as a runner has been getting a strange, like, an oddly low amount of opportunities.
Yeah.
That might be
Najee Harris in this game early on too.
That was weird.
Yeah, that was a little weird.
I don't really understand that. Maybe that's just like a we owe it to this guy for sticking. Could that have been like a we owe it to the guy for sticking with us and coming here to be the 4th string running back when he could have went to Michigan and probably, like, started? Like, hey, here's your play in the Iron Bowl. Have a good time.
Or it's some sort of tendency, I don't know, but they don't even use them enough to have tendencies. I don't know. I just thought that was weird.
It was weird. It was weird. But do you guys buy, though, that, like, Damian didn't get enough carries this year? I mean, there's only so many carries to go around, right? Like, you want to get
only so many to go
involved.
around when you've got 3 effective backs and a running quarterback.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if they give him more carries and he's less effective at this point in the season, I mean, are we?
That could be.
I don't think we want that.
Down last year.
Right.
Definitely.
I don't think you can. It's hard to say that his relative lack of use has not contributed to his production.
Yep.
And, like, it's very clear from the way he produces when they put him in games that he's not one of those backs that needs 15 plus carries a game to be productive. Like, you have those guys. Like, you have some guys that need to kind of keep hammering away, and then eventually they start winning.
Right.
Carry on. Yeah. Damian's not one of those guys. Damian could come in and have 5 to 9 carries and make something with those carries. So I don't know. Damien's a really good bet. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't if you want to say one of the running backs, this guy needs to get more carries. Damien, definitely.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think people are drawing conclusions from some shaky premises.
Yeah. Like where's it going to make a difference? Like,
yeah, that's another thing too, right? Is like I don't think that's cost them their season. Is not giving the ball to Damien enough.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, so overall, the offense missed a lot of opportunities. I just wanted to sort of say one more thing. I wanted to just go through one more thing in terms of just how many points were left off the board. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of those 10 drives, Alabama was in Auburn territory. 7 of the 10 drives, they were in Auburn territory.
Yeah.
And they scored on 2 of them.
And I think one of those drives, the Calvin drop at the end of the half. I mean, he catches it. They probably don't go down score, but at least you keep Auburn from kicking a late 2-second field goal at the end of the half.
And you keep your defense off the field for more plays, right? You keep their you keep their offense off the field. You get to run more plays for your own offense. That was a huge play at that time. And hey, nice call by the offensive coordinator too, because they checked into that at the line. That came from the sideline. They checked into that. It was right there. And your best player didn't make the play, and it happens. Like I'm not gonna like criticize Calvin for that because guys just don't make plays sometimes. But like that's putting guys in positions to succeed, and the guys just didn't succeed. So shit sucks. We have any more to say about the offense? Probably said more than enough.
Yeah.
There's some stuff about the defense to discuss. Let's start off with the good with the defense. Okay, like there's some good stuff here.
The standard downs.
Standard downs.
They really held Carry-On in check.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I think his final stat line ended up being pretty good, but he especially on standard downs, he did not have a lot of good runs at all.
Yeah, and a lot of the stat down I think was somewhat padded by what he did later in the game, like in the fourth quarter stuff.
Yeah.
And at that point, a lot of that was a function of that the plays just piled up on Alabama, right? The defense was on the field for just too many plays. But when they were fresh, they played well.
Yeah, I mean, he had, I think on their first touchdown drive, he had a nice run to get them out of kind of the shadow of the goal line. And that's about it.
Their defensive line, Alabama's defensive line played well. Deron Payne and Raekwon Davis were good. I thought Dylan Moses was good. I'm so excited for Dylan Moses going forward.
He was
Him
really
and
good.
Mac Wilson next year at those inside linebacker position, they got a chance to be really, really, really good. Really good.
Yeah.
They just played well. They played well up front.
Their rushing success rate was well below average for the national. I mean, it was like 29%. So less than 1 in 3 plays was.
And do we know what so that's less than the national average.
Yeah.
Where does it compare to Auburn's average?
I can pull
Can we
up.
find that?
I don't know about their. Yeah. Let's see. 46%. 47%.
Okay. So well below.
So yeah.
So this is one of the interesting things, right? When you want to talk about was Auburn demonstrably better than Alabama? This is the thing that they do best, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is running the ball on offense. That's the thing that they do best on that side of the ball. That's what they want to do. That's what their offense is built around. They didn't do it well at all. And it's not like Alabama overcompensated to stop it. Alabama played a very normal game plan on defense.
Right.
They blitzed a lot off the slot. Sometimes they brought a safety down in the box, but they didn't do anything unusual to commit extra guys to stopping the run. They just stopped it because they were better than Auburn up front. I really think I really truly believe that Alabama was better in the trenches on both sides of the ball, on balance. Like not every drive, not every play, and not in the fourth quarter.
And like passing downs on offense,
really because of one matchup. But
yeah.
But like overall, they won up front.
Yep.
So that was the good. The bad was third downs. Third downs were bad. We sat
very bad
last week. We sat here last week and we said, not only do we expect Alabama to win on passing downs, but we want big plays going the other way. We want interceptions. We want strip sacks. This was the one area that we weren't worried about. Man, if you told me that their success rate on running downs was going to be, or running plays was going to be 29%, that they were going to play as well up front as they did, I would have guaranteed that they would have won. I would have bet so much money on Alabama winning that game. And I would have lost it all. I would have lost every dime.
And some of that is again is kind of uncharacteristic things that kept drives going, and not as often as on offense, but like penalties, like the Rashaan Evans thing was ridiculous.
Oh, that was so stupid.
What I didn't understand about that was that that was an after the play unnecessary roughness penalty. He didn't do anything.
Yeah, it looked like he had ripped his helmet off when really he was just holding his helmet.
Right, his helmet just
slipped out. Stidham just moved his head out of his helmet.
Yep.
And then to Alabama's credit, like as a reflection of how well at times they were playing defensively, that penalty happened. Carry-on ran a short run, and then Daron Payne and Rashaan Evans got consecutive pressures on Stidham to force throwaways.
Yeah.
They pushed him back, and Daniel Carlson doesn't miss, so he made a 44-yarder. But like, good job by the defense.
Yep.
But they couldn't stop him on third downs. I don't understand why. I understand that Stidham played great. That's like a big part of it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I think that honestly is the biggest part of it.
People are trying to say, now we spent a lot of time this year talking about manufactured pressure and how that's the bread and butter. Did Alabama go to it too much, especially when it didn't really work all that well early in the game? Like they got burned on a screen to carry on early in the game on a pressure play. I think that was on the 94-yard drive where Auburn scored their first touchdown. Yeah. And they had the third and long before that. Alabama didn't blitz, and Auburn got the first down. So then I think on the next third and long, Chip Lindsey knew that they were going to bring pressure, and he made the perfect call.
And wasn't that right after they had just run another screen too, or something?
Maybe, yeah. I'm losing track of the plays in my mind, but probably this was their bread and butter all year. The one thing that I think you can say is that, like, Terrell Lewis and Christian Miller look pretty healthy, and you could maybe make the case that, you don't want to sit back and just let them, pick you apart when you send for and know you're not going to get any pressure. And, before this week, I wouldn't have wanted them to do that because I would have thought that they're not going to get any pressure. But maybe you could say that with those two guys back, you should have counted on your edge rushers to get home and played coverage behind it. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. The problem with just I don't know. I haven't gone back. Neither of them got a ton of snaps, did they?
Terrell Lewis got more than Christian Miller.
Okay.
Definitely got more. He got a fair amount. He was in pretty quickly and early. Christian Miller did not get a ton of snaps. But this is their bread and butter all year.
Yeah. I don't think it was unreasonable with the type of receivers that Auburn has and the type of defensive backs that Alabama has and the way they had success blitzing all year that I don't know. Maybe they should have made an adjustment later in the game. I don't think it was a bad game plan to come in saying we're going to be aggressive and blitz a lot.
The drive where Auburn ultimately took the lead, Mack came on what looked like a green dog blitz. He just whiffed. Just had a clean shot.
Third and 7. 3rd 7, and he whiffs and still
And,
runs for
and the
9.
part about that too was that was going to push them out of field goal range, I think.
Yep.
Like, not only was the drive going to end, but they probably weren't even going to get a field goal. And he just whiffed.
Yeah,
and then, I don't know, like, Levi got beat a couple times, not by big margins, like relatively small margin, but he got beat.
Just a step slow here and there.
That's right. I mean, that's kind of the thing, right? Like, just a step slow. Mac couldn't get the jam on Hastings over the middle on that one play. Just these very isolated situations. Ryan Davis is a really good player. He played really well. And Stidham played great. He was making really good throws. Like, his ball placement was good. And they didn't hit any big plays. I don't even remember them attempting many big plays. I remember they attempted one big play when Alabama didn't get their guys off the field, so it was a penalty anyway.
Yeah.
There was one.
They were very against tendency in the passing game.
And then the guys made plays. I think that, like, I think I said this on Twitter, but whereas for a lot of the game Alabama won up front, their quarterback just played better than Alabama's, like significantly better.
Yeah.
And Stidham was good. He was really good. But I don't think the defense played badly. I know Saban said after the game he had some line like we would play really well on defense for 2 or 3 consecutive plays. And then we would just not make the play on the final play or something. And, I don't know. Like, they did a good job blocking up some of the manufactured pressure too, giving Stidham just enough time.
Right.
But also, like, the coverage couldn't hold up just for like a half second longer, which they should have been able to do, and they didn't do it. They just were just like, they weren't. I didn't think Alabama played horribly on those 3rd downs. I just thought on some of the plays they were just like a tick off, or a guy was in position to make a play and he didn't make it. We've seen games where, think back to like the Ohio State Sugar Bowl against Cardale. There were 3rd downs in that game where there were just guys running square and free 15 yards down the field, nobody near them.
Yeah.
That's like playing like shit on 3rd downs. That's just not playing well. This wasn't that, right? This was very similar to Mississippi State, I thought.
Yeah.
Where, like, it was just often like a guy was just like a tick off. Like, things were schemed up pretty well. Pressure was going to get home. And just like a guy just had like the half step and the quarterback put the ball into the perfect window.
And I think another point is that they had pretty much decent field position on every drive as well. So, like, they never.
Auburn did?
Yeah.
Aside from the first touchdown drive.
Yeah.
So did Auburn like, in terms of like hidden yardage, did Auburn actually win that? Maybe they didn't win like substantially, but did they win it? I
think they did.
Yeah, well, so that's something we talked about also, right? Like, Alabama's been great with field position this year. Auburn's been bad with field position. Is that predictive? Like, when you mash those two things together, are you going to get a game where the field position really favors Alabama? Well, in this case, no, we didn't.
Yeah.
And some of that's just the lack of conversions on the other side.
Right. So that's a good point too. That, like, it all kind of works hand in hand. One team made plays on 3rd down, the other team didn't. What did Alabama go on third? What did Alabama offensively go on 3rd downs in this game?
Overall, like,
Jalen maybe scrambled for one in like the early 4th quarter, and that might have been their first one that they got all game.
All 3 were in the 4th quarter. They were 3 for 11.
Jesus. Auburn average starting field position, not quite the 31-yard line. Alabama average starting field position, the 24-yard line.
Well,
that's my roommate playing Call of Duty, I think.
Well,
I can't. You can probably hear him better than I can because I have like headphones in my ear.
He was not happy about something.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. I hope that turned out well. I hope that ultimately turns out well for him. I guess, but we got to get into the playoff, I know. But
Yeah.
the one thing I was going to say, what do you guys make of the total plays issue that they seem to be having in these games? Clearly, this is becoming a factor. Like, so take the national championship 2 years ago. Alabama could not get any stops in the fourth quarter. And if it wasn't for like the onside kick and the Kenyon Drake return for a touchdown and the O.J. Howard long catch and run where somehow he stayed in bounds and went all those yards down the sideline, like if it wasn't for those plays, Alabama probably loses that game because the total plays had just skewed so far in Clemson's favor that their defense was exhausted and they couldn't get any stops.
Yeah.
And then last year, obviously, as so much has been made of this, the defense was just dead and they couldn't do anything on those last two drives. They just put up no resistance.
Yeah.
And then the total plays was an issue, obviously, on Saturday. So this is a problem. It seems like it's like a trend at this point.
Except that, like, it's... I don't know. I don't think you can say it's the same issue.
That's what I'm asking. I'm not coming. I'm trying to come into this without having any preconceived notions.
Yeah, I really don't think it is because we sort of hit on this earlier in the show against Clemson in 2015. More so in 2015. In 2016, they were good getting stops. So in 2015, like they just couldn't kind of stop Deshaun the whole game.
Right.
Like, I think both those years, first of all, it's a credit to how incredible Deshaun Watson is. So in 15, that offense was Alabama's offense was very boom or bust.
Right. That was the thing, right? So they had some quick drives, some big plays.
Yeah. So I think that was part of it along with Deshaun. And then 16, obviously, we've talked about. They just, they kept making 3 and outs. They just the passing game was not advanced enough to consistently move the ball against that Clemson defense. But the sum of everything we've talked about for this game, this wasn't a case where they just kept making 3 and outs, or they just the other team was too good on offense and they couldn't get a stop. It was really just that things kept adding up one way or the other,
Are there any sort of constants, any constants between the 3 games? I mean, trouble on third downs.
The general lack of an intermediate passing game is one.
Yeah, that's probably.
We've kind of touched on that already. I think that's the only. Other point there. You want to complain about Jalen in the intermediate passing game? Was Jake Coker a great intermediate passer?
Right.
I seem to recall that he threw a lot of screens and a lot of bombs.
Yeah.
But if you want to point to a common element, that's it.
Yeah.
I think that's really the only common thread you can draw between all 3 games.
Does Alabama also not do a great job against they're so big play oriented sometimes, which is not a bad thing, but does that somehow culminate in this happening?
Like getting beat on big plays, or
no, making big plays. Think about the national championship games against Clemson, the big plays, think about the touchdown drives. The last 2 specifically against Clemson, you had they scored real quick on that smoke and go to OJ, and then they scored on a 4-play drive or whatever when they took the lead on their last offensive possession in that game. And even in this game, this wasn't big plays, but their touchdown drive coming out of the half, that was only 5 plays. It was all runs, and the longest run was maybe 30 yards, but it was only 5 plays. And that's not a criticism of them, but maybe it's just fluky, right? Maybe there's just these fluky things where the offense doesn't play well, they give the ball right back to the other team. The offense does play well, and they still give the ball right back to the other team. So you just have this weird confluence of factors where no matter what the offense does, they can't seem to keep the ball for an extended period of time.
Right. And it's like, well, and you saw that against Mississippi State too, right? Like in the touchdown drives in the first
Exactly.
half, they were both off long passes basically, and it's just like,
Yeah.
I don't know, what do you say there? Like, don't go for big plays down the field? I mean, that's ridiculous.
Right. But you
So
also saw in the Mississippi State game, right, that when they scored the touchdown to tie it at 24, that was like a long drive. And that's really where they reestablished control over the game.
yeah,
So there really is a benefit to the long drives, but like you said, there's not really a solution here because it's not like don't score fast because scoring fast is good because it's scoring.
Yeah.
But clearly there's an element here, and it all goes back to the intermediate passing game, where Alabama struggles to sustain drives because when they get in third downs, they struggle because of their lack of an intermediate passing game, right? So that's an area where they need to improve. Like, I guess that's the point, right? The upshot of any conversation about offense or about total plays or any of that stuff is just got to do better throwing the ball.
Yep.
One way or the other. Anything else to say about the Iron Bowl?
I'm done. I'm emotionally drained from talking about it.
Yeah. Mitch?
Be happy to play him again.
Oh.
God, can you imagine if it's like, if as we'll talk about, say it's the most likely scenario for Alabama to get in the playoff. Clemson wins, Auburn wins, Wisconsin wins, TCU beats Oklahoma. So you've got a top four of, in order, Clemson, Auburn, Wisconsin, Alabama. So you play Auburn, or you play Clemson in the semifinals, and if you win that one, you probably play Auburn. Can you imagine national championship? God, I would go bald from stress over the course of like 2 quarters.
Oh, it would be great, though.
I would love that so much.
Yeah.
It'd be great. Well, that's a good time to transition here into the playoff, which obviously is ultimately what matters right now. I wanted to run down really quick. I made a little list here. Alabama has kind of had some weird bad luck here, right? So first of all, as far as their resume goes, they're the only team, they're the only Power 5 team with 1 loss or fewer that does not control their own destiny.
Yeah.
Right? That's just like weird.
Yep.
Like why Alabama? Why can't it be somebody else? Why can't it be any of the other teams? Why does it have to be our team?
Yeah.
Just joking, but like seriously, why the fuck does it have to be Alabama? So they're the only team not in control of their own destiny. And then I just thought about like the weird things that have happened to kind of diminish their resume. So the biggest one obviously is the Francois injury. I don't know. I'm not saying that, like, first of all, that happened when the game was over, so it didn't like it was completely over.
Yeah.
I'm not sitting here and telling you that Florida State's 11-1 right now if Francois doesn't break his leg, but they're probably like 10-2 or 9-3, right?
Yeah.
They had like they were so particularly like uniquely ill-equipped to deal with that, because I think over the last couple of years they had 3 or 4 scholarship quarterbacks leave the team, so they were left with like nobody else to play that position when Francois went down.
And also, Jimbo is sort of a uniquely poor coach to have in a scenario where you have a true freshman quarterback and you need to make things easier on him, because Jimbo apparently just doesn't know how to do that.
Right, he does not. Jimbo refuses to run the quarterback. He refuses to use his RPOs.
Yeah,
like he refuses to simplify his passing offense.
His Madden settings are on all Madden at all times.
Yeah. Why doesn't Jimbo go to the NFL? Like, clearly that's where he wants to be, right? Like, that's how he coaches.
Good question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Has he ever been in the NFL? I don't think so, right?
Was he the Dolphin? Was he not? He wasn't at Miami with Saban?
Good question.
I don't think so. I think he was. Was he still? Didn't he like stay at LSU with
Yeah,
Les Miles after Saban left? Wasn't it something like that?
I don't know.
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Or yeah, for like 1 year, and then went to Florida State, and yeah.
So he should. I mean, God, he should be in the NFL. So that was one thing that really hurt them. LSU's lost to Troy. Like, what are you guys doing?
No.
How do you lose to Troy at home? I mean, obviously, if they're going to play Troy, they're going to play Troy at home. But like, they lost at home to Troy.
I mean, it's just like, are we even having this? Like, if Florida State goes 9, if Francois doesn't get hurt and Florida State goes 9-3, and LSU doesn't lose to Troy and is 10-2 and ranked in like the 10 to 12.
Yeah,
range.
where are they ranked? Where are they ranked if they don't lose to Troy? Because think about what LSU's resume is, right? They're 10-2. They got whooped early in the season by Mississippi State in a weird game where there was like a lot of turnovers and everything. But yeah, that sucks. Like, you can't do that. But clearly the committee doesn't really hold bad losses against teams.
Especially early in the season.
Obviously, yeah.
Early in the season. Because their only other loss in this scenario is in Tuscaloosa. And they beat Auburn. Right? I feel like that's forgotten. They beat Auburn. So they're 10-2 with one of their losses coming in Tuscaloosa and another one coming at home against Auburn. They could be like high. They're going to be ahead of TCU.
Yep. And then obviously this hasn't hurt Alabama too much, but like Mississippi State is still ranked, but they'd be a little higher if
Fitzgerald doesn't get hurt.
They were 9-3, and Fitzgerald doesn't get hurt. Yeah.
What would have been say they lose to Troy but beat Mississippi State, then you have a 3-way tie for the West, right? And then what would be the tiebreaker?
It goes to the combined records of common opponents, right? Which means that all the combined records for your division are the same, so it comes down to the combined records of your East opponents. Auburn has Georgia in that situation. Yeah. So Auburn probably goes. Okay. But like, think about if that stuff happens, if Francois doesn't get hurt, if LSU doesn't lose to Troy, and if Mississippi State doesn't lose to Ole Miss, in large part because Fitzgerald got hurt, they have I don't know. They have wins over 3 top 20 teams.
Yep.
LSU might be fringe top 10.
Yep.
Fresno State's 25, so that's 4 over top 25 teams. Like, that's a good resume. That's what I feel like Alabama's resume is.
Yeah. Yep. It's because they do have a win over a Florida State team that probably does go at least 9-3. As the Florida State team that Alabama played,
right, is
that team, not the team.
The Mississippi State that Alabama played was the team with Fitzgerald. The team with Fitzgerald is good enough to go 9-3, and their only home loss should have been to Alabama. And LSU just shouldn't have lost to Troy. Like, what are you guys doing? And then, like, 2 other factors here that are weird. Like, we just talked about the fact that the Iron Bowl, the score of the Iron Bowl was not really reflective of how the game was played. And I think people would see Alabama a lot differently if that was like a super close last-second loss, which is really what it should have been.
Imagine if it's just like Robert Foster converts, and nothing goes differently except Robert Foster converts that 4th down, and they score on that drive, and the final score is 26-21.
Yeah, it's seen a lot differently. And then the other thing that sucked, which is nothing really to do directly with Alabama, but Michigan should have won that game on Saturday. The Ohio State, like Barrett gets hurt, and then they're moving the ball, and first of all, they miss an extra point, which is the only reason that Ohio State even got the lead in the first place.
Yeah.
And then
what was the final score of that game?
Well, they ran it in late, so they won. They won like 31-20, maybe, I think, because Dobbins ran one in late. But like it was 24-20. And Michigan was across midfield, and O'Corn was just like missing wide open guys.
Yep. They were both down to their backup quarterbacks, and Michigan's was worse. Way worse.
And now that's a credit to Urban, because he, for some reason, like we talked about how Jimbo was uniquely bad at getting stuff out of his like backup quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Urban is uniquely good at getting stuff out of his backup quarterbacks.
Just starting the worst quarterback every time.
Like wildly good at getting, like almost incomprehensibly good at getting stuff out of his backup quarterbacks. And obviously, if Ohio State had lost, then Alabama would probably have more than one path to the playoffs. Okay, so just a quick rundown of bad luck. That sucks. Nothing we can do about it. The big question that I want to ask you guys is this. The big negative thing that really hurts Alabama right now from the playoff picture standpoint is what was said after the rankings, which is that number 5 Alabama and number 8 Ohio State are close. They're on the margins. It's very hard to believe. We'll get to this in a second, but it's very hard to believe that if Ohio State wins, that they're not going to jump Alabama.
If they're close now, then if Ohio State adds another top 5 win and
a conference championship,
then they're not going to get the bump. Especially since that the most likely scenario involves the 2 teams between them, Georgia and Miami, losing.
So I want to isolate this conversation. I don't even want to deal with what should happen, with what do we think would happen, but I don't even want to talk about what do we think should happen with 11-1 Alabama against an Ohio State team if they beat Wisconsin. What I want to focus very specifically on is right now, before Ohio State plays that game on Saturday, as the rankings are now, should Alabama and Ohio State be viewed as close to each other? Like, is the committee wrong about that, objectively?
I just don't understand, and people keep saying this all the time, and it's very clear that the committee thinks this way, that they just wins matter more to them than losses, which I just don't. Every game should matter, right? And it's how you play that should matter. And I'm not even talking about something as nebulous as the eye test, but it's just like, to take an extreme example, if you mess around at home against a bad G5 opponent and you win by a field goal, and then you go out the next week and you're on the road against a top 5 team and you take them down to the wire and they beat you on a last-second play. How can anyone say that loss is not better than that win? Just purely in terms of who you played and how the game went. Not like, oh, I'm going to do this, intense statistical analysis, or like I'm a coach and blah, blah, blah. I think the run game's really good. Forget all that qualitative stuff about the teams. Just, how can you say that wins just matter more than losses because they're wins? And that, I feel, is the way the committee is thinking. And so I don't understand why. Ultimately, what this comes down to is, if you lose by 31 points to Iowa, you shouldn't be in the damn playoff. That is, like, by far the worst loss that any team that's going to be in the playoff would ever have. And why are they not being penalized for that? They don't have any excuse. No excuse. This isn't Iowa. How many points did Iowa score all season?
Yeah, they're the highest ranked. Ohio State is not being penalized for that at all. They're the highest ranked 2-loss team. They're very. What is that?
Besides Auburn.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Right, Auburn. Whoops. Okay, besides Auburn. Obviously, Auburn exists in a different category, and Auburn is probably fairly ranked. They're the second highest loss 2-loss team behind only Auburn. They're very, and not only that, but they're very close to number 5, Alabama, who's, right on the cusp of the playoff picture. And I hear people I've heard people whose opinions I very much respect say, like, oh, well, things happen when you go to Kinnick. But like,
bullshit.
I mean, Kinnick, like Iowa's last game at home, they lost to Purdue.
Yeah.
By 9 points.
Maybe it wasn't the week after, but shortly after, Iowa beat Ohio State 55-24. They went out and played Wisconsin, and
The next
credit to
week.
Wisconsin, they had 66 yards of total offense.
Yeah.
They had 11 more yards, and then they did points against Ohio State.
Right. And even if we just isolate their performances at home, the week before, so because this is basically what people are saying, like this is how much people are reaching to excuse that loss, is that they're basically asking us to look at Iowa as two separate teams. Like,
Yeah.
oh well, like yeah, they lost, they scored, they had 66 yards of total offense at Wisconsin, but that wasn't a Kinnick. Different team. And first of all, obviously, like that's a flawed argument. But like, even if we just look at their games at home, the week before Ohio State, they played Minnesota at home. Minnesota is not going to a bowl game. They're 5-7. They just lost 31-0 at home to Wisconsin. They beat them 17-10. Like 17-10. That's not very good. And that's at home.
I just imagine
like they beat Minnesota 17-10 at home. And they lost to Purdue. What's Purdue's record? Hold on, I want to see what Purdue's record is. What's Purdue's record? Purdue, who beat Iowa by multiple scores at home, is 6-6.
Just imagine if the names, you just swap the names of the teams on the schedules, right? Imagine Alabama has, all these good wins, and Ohio State, is so Ohio State's 11-1, but doesn't have a lot of good wins,
right?
And has a loss to a top 4 team. And Alabama has a lot of great wins, has a loss to a top 4 team, let's say Auburn, and then they lost 55-24 to a 7-5 Texas A&M team. Anyone would be making a case for Alabama to go to the playoff if they had lost 55-24 in Texas A&M.
I wouldn't think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah. So okay. So I think what so the first point that we've established here, I think, is that Ohio State is not paying enough for their loss.
Yep.
The one thing that we have to agree on is that
also another point, people are gonna basically make Alabama's loss to Auburn and Ohio State's loss to Oklahoma equivalent. They're not. Ohio State actually got whooped in that game,
right? And
they were at home. That game was not as close as the score, whereas we've just spent an hour and a half telling you that Alabama and Auburn was closer than the score.
Yeah, and also people are saying, oh well, Ohio State lost an out-of-conference game, Alabama didn't. Well, that's because Ohio State had a hard out-of-conference schedule and Alabama didn't. I don't agree.
Yeah.
I don't agree. The problem is you're never going to convince anyone of that, though, right?
Nope.
We've been fighting battles like this for every year where we've had this podcast. People are going to look at the Florida State win and they're going to see that Alabama beat a 6-6 team, and it's not how I see it. I don't see it like that. I think that Alabama beat a good team. And by the way, Alabama also both teams are dealing with the same thing, but people think Alabama takes it easy with these out of conference neutral site games, and they don't go on the road, and I wish they went on the road. But the one thing that they do, which is a real test to themselves, is that they play it the first week. Yep. Now, both teams are playing it the first week, so both teams are equally challenged. But I think that people lose sight of the fact that it is hard to play a marquee matchup the first week.
Alabama does it every single year.
Right. And Alabama takes that challenge on. That Florida State game, I watched that Florida State game. We all watched that Florida State game. That was a tough game against a good team. That was really played pretty evenly. By the way, Alabama won that game 24-7. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it was a 17-point spread between the two teams in terms of quality of play. That was a close win.
Yeah.
And I will fully and readily admit that that was a close win. Just like I will admit that Alabama does not deserve credit for beating the 11-2 Rose Bowl champion USC last year. Because I am
certainly not by 52-6.
Right. I'm not taking this argument both ways. I'm judging teams by what they were at the time, not by where they finished. Florida State was good at the time. They were very good at the time. Bud Elliott came on his podcast afterwards and was saying, like, if it wasn't for Francois' injury, I would be super upbeat right now, and I'd be talking about this team having a legitimate shot to go 11-1 and win the ACC and get into the playoff. I think that's what everybody's reaction was after watching that game.
Yep.
And then Francois got hurt and their season fell apart. But that doesn't have anything to do with what happened to Alabama that day. So two things for sure, right? Alabama is not getting enough credit for their marquee out-of-conference win, and Ohio State is not getting dinged enough for their
horrific loss.
Horrific loss. One thing that we do agree, though, is that Ohio State's best wins are better than Alabama's best wins. That's
their top win. What past Penn State do we think?
What would we say again?
Past Ohio State's best win.
Well, this is an interesting question. Right? Okay.
All right. Okay. Well, they have a win over Penn State.
Yeah.
Give them credit for that. Michigan State. I don't know. Is Michigan State still ranked? Yes. Right.
They are. Yeah.
And look, even if that's not a great team, that's a pretty good team, and they beat the pants off them.
Right, which they get credit for. And we were always talking about quality of win. They were so much better than Michigan State.
I think the difference is less pronounced now than people are acting like it is. Yeah, I mean, if they win over Wisconsin, that's a really great win. So,
well, that's the thing, right? So our conversation is, should they be close right now? So, like, we've already established that they're not getting docked enough for their loss. Alabama's not getting enough credit for their Florida State win. And the difference in top wins is not as big right now, right? As it would be with Wisconsin. Like, is the difference even that big?
I don't think so.
And also, I don't know, like, this stuff isn't perfect, but I think Bill Connolly has their strength of schedules very close. Alabama's and Ohio State, their overall strength of schedules very close.
Yeah.
Maybe the back end teams on Alabama's schedule are better than the back end teams on Ohio State's schedule. Like, Alabama, like, right, what does Ohio State have going for them right now over Alabama?
Basically the Penn State win.
And that's it.
Yep.
But okay, so who has Penn State beat this year to make us think that Penn State's any good?
Well, that's a good question too. Now, Penn State also hasn't had a bad game. I know that's something that a lot of people have pointed out about them, right? That they don't have a real bad performance on their resume.
2-point win at Iowa.
Well, it's in Kinnick. I mean, come on, man.
Kinnick, sorry.
It was in Kinnick. That one's.
It's a big one. Yeah. So, what is their best win?
Penn State's. I mean, that's
Michigan. It's Michigan. It's Michigan.
Yeah. So Michigan's unranked, right? So Penn State doesn't have a single win over a ranked team. Is that correct? So this is where like the contradictions really start to set in. Ohio State is a lot better than Alabama, or okay, a lot better. I'm creating a straw man, but Ohio State deserves to be ranked ahead of Alabama because their wins are going to be a lot better, right? Because of their wins, because of their best wins. That's what they have going for them.
Yeah.
But the teams that they beat, who are supposedly their best wins, are those teams any good?
Yeah.
Well, if they haven't beaten anyone that's really good, then why are they good in these people's minds? Why is Wisconsin good? Who's Wisconsin's best win?
Northwestern.
Okay, So Wisconsin has a win against a fringe top 25 team, and Penn State has no wins against top 25 teams. So why in turn are those Ohio State wins any good? If the focal point, the point that matters most about your resume is who you beat. Penn State didn't beat anyone. The toughest two games that they played, they lost both of them.
Yep.
If Wisconsin loses to Ohio State, basically the only tough game that they played this year, they would have lost. So if those this is where it really falls apart to judge everybody on just their best wins, because you then have to extend that out to the other teams that are on the periphery of the equation. As this is a very your argument then becomes inconsistent, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It is clear that Ohio State and Alabama should not be close right now. Because the way you argue that Alabama and Ohio State are close right now is to do so in a way in which you're going to contradict yourself later when you talk about Ohio State's best wins. So Ohio State's best win starts to fall apart. But you know whose best win doesn't fall apart by that same formula or by that same way of looking at things?
Alabama's.
Because it was against LSU. And who did LSU beat?
Auburn.
The number 2 team in the country. Maybe the best team in the country. The team that just beat the 2 teams that were ranked number 1. So it's crap. It's crap. The best win argument is crap. And this is why it's important to take a more holistic view at a team's resume. Because when you get bogged down in, what's this team's best win? What's this team's best win? That's all we're going to judge them by. Well, then you create issues for yourself. You create inconsistencies in your argument. But if you look at the resume holistically, you see the full picture. And the full picture shows that right now, Alabama's resume is significantly better than Ohio State's. Now, if they beat Wisconsin, that's a really good win. Now, is it a really good win for the people that just want to look at a team's best wins because who is Wisconsin beat? Whatever. I'll give Ohio State that. That's a significant win. But is it enough to close the margin? Is it enough to close what should be the margin?
Yeah.
It will be enough to close what is the margin. I guess that's my next question because we've exhausted the Alabama-Ohio State comparisons. Is there any way in which Ohio State wins in which they don't jump Alabama? Is there anything that can happen in that game? Is there any way that the Big Ten winner is not ranked above Alabama? I think we agree that no matter if Wisconsin wins, no matter what, they're going to be ahead of Alabama.
I can only see if it's basically on a kick 6 type play.
And even then, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I'm different. I do give Alabama a better chance to still be above Ohio State.
But even with but how do you square that with what they said?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know the context of the question. I don't know.
I guess what I'm sort of challenging on is: are you saying that because of what your perception is?
No.
Are you allowing your perception of where these teams are to influence that opinion?
A little bit of this is the different people that try and predict these things still give Alabama a decent shot of being ahead of Ohio State. I think the fact that they have to make up 3 spots. I'm still not sold that it's a lot. I would still favor Ohio State to be ahead of Alabama. I'm not saying that, but I would still give Alabama more of a chance than.
Give me let's say Ohio State wins sort of a nondescript,
right?
I don't know, 23-16 game. They didn't get a miracle play at the end to win it. Right. They were better throughout the game, not much better, but better enough to win by 7 points, which I think is the spread. Basically the game goes as expected. At that point, what percentage chance do you give Alabama to get in over Ohio State?
40% maybe.
Okay. Carter?
I know y'all are not that high yet.
30, 25.
5. I think maybe I'm being too pessimistic.
I'm being optimistic.
Yeah. I just think I mean, the whole point of the committee is to get the 4 best teams, right?
But that's
best
so
teams.
clearly not what they're doing.
It's not what they do, though.
Okay,
like, they can say that all they want, but it's not what they. What do you say?
They did it in 2014.
But they did they really do it in 2014 though? Like, they took
Ohio State over.
But they took a 1-loss Ohio State team over other 1-loss teams. Like it would have been real gutsy if they took a 2-loss Ohio State team over those big over those Big 12 teams. Like if Ohio State in 2014 had lost the second game that year, maybe early in the season when they were still figuring out their quarterback situation, but it was clear by the end of the season that on the field they were better than TCU and Baylor. Like, that's something. But they don't deserve credit for this whole, like, they took the best team. Like, they took a 1-loss conference champ over other 1-loss
Well, and also these are probably different people than we're picking.
That's true also.
Too,
yeah.
There's been a fair amount of turnover on the committee by this point.
I would also add that it's not 100% that I think there's also a small chance that if Miami wins, that Alabama has a shot
to go ahead of Miami.
Yeah, a small chance. Yeah.
But so that's so interesting though, because I think that conventional wisdom says that we need to root for Clemson this weekend, right? Because Clemson winning. Because Clemson. Sorry, say again.
Clemson's I think Clemson's guaranteed out if they lose.
Yeah, see, I don't know. The committee is so in love with them and how many great wins they have, and they basically totally forget. They basically acting like they haven't lost. The committee is treating them like they haven't lost.
Alabama just went from number 1 to number 5, losing to what the committee thinks is the second best team in the country for their first loss. And Clemson would not fall out of the top 4, having lost to a team that was outside of the top 4 for their second loss.
I mean, they should.
I agree with you, but
I just think there's.
I think that Clemson probably doesn't make the playoff if they lose.
Right.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's like a guarantee to the point where, so Mitch, I guess to your point, I think that it's not a 100% guarantee that if Clemson loses, they're out. And I also think it is a 100% guarantee that if Miami loses, they're in. Or if Miami wins, they're in. So I'm rooting for Clemson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that.
I think the one thing that, outside of all these like small, like kind of things that matter on the periphery, the one thing I think we can all agree on is that what really matters for Alabama this weekend is the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, that one's the clear. Yeah.
I don't know a lot about TCU. Maybe you guys know more than me. I guess what I'm looking for is like, what are the chances that TCU wins? I think S&P.
Yeah, S&P has it at like 40%, I think.
That's not bad. If that's like actually what it is, I'll take that.
Yeah, I'll take it.
But is it? Oklahoma whipped them pretty good at home, right? But maybe TCU came back a little bit in the second half. What was the final score? 38-20?
I'm sort of hoping that we get that Gary Patterson kind of lives up to his reputation and, out schemes them basically.
Yeah, how is TCU? So TCU, I'm trying to think about like big games that TCU's played in the past. Like under Patterson, they lost.
Oh, I mean, when they were in the Mountain West, they were great in like BCS games.
Yup, yeah, they were great in BCS games. What about in the Big 12? I mean, they've been good, right?
Yeah.
Oh man, I want to believe.
Yeah, it's like it's not a fool's hope.
Yeah.
It's not the most likely outcome, but it's certain. There's a very, very legitimate chance.
Yeah, I guess that's what you got to hang your hat on. So if TCU wins, how sure are we that Alabama gets in?
100%, pretty much. because like the only possible scenario, I guess, is Miami beating Clemson and Clemson staying in.
Yeah.
But
if TCU wins, you root for chalk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the loser, the loser of Ohio State, Wisconsin is out.
Yeah.
So you would have teams like Team 3 and Team 4 losing.
The loser of the SEC is out. That's not.
Yeah, I don't think that's particularly controversial. Like for all Auburn's good wins, and that their losses would be to all great teams. Like they're not staying in as a 3-loss non-champion. That's not happening. Yeah. I don't think George is gonna get another crack at Auburn with potentially another crack at Auburn with 2 losses to Auburn already. I just don't think that's gonna happen. And Georgia's resume is not that great now. Like they don't. The Notre Dame win's not that great. So.
And I don't think the rematch issue with Alabama and Auburn is a big deal, mostly because Clemson's probably going to win. Like people are saying, like maybe they'll avoid putting Alabama in because they don't want to rematch with Auburn, and they do. The committee does apparently try to avoid rematches, but that's probably a non-issue because Clemson wins anyway, right? If Alabama gets in, they get in at the 4.
Yeah.
Auburn's probably going to be 2, so they're not going to rematch anyway unless they both win their game and play in the national championship, in which case it's less relevant. I don't know. I guess it's just TCU. It's like all or mostly on TCU.
Yeah.
We wanted to go in this weekend having multiple shots. We wanted to go in this weekend having like 2 shots. We probably
I'm pretty sure it's just 1. So
at least they have a chance. You know, when they lost 4 years ago to Auburn, they didn't have a chance going into the final weekend.
Yeah, for the playoff.
No, not for the playoff. I mean, I guess if Duke beat Florida State. But that wasn't going to happen anyway.
Nope.
So, look, it's unfortunate that they're in this position, but TCU could help us out. And if they do, I will be forever grateful to them in the same way that I am forever grateful to Iowa State, in the same way that I'm forever grateful to Kansas State, in the same way that I'm forever grateful to Stanford, in the same way that I'm forever grateful to some of those other teams that won games in 2011 that helped assure Alabama of the number 2 spot. So I will be forever grateful, and I guess that's all I have to say. What's the thing that TCU does?
That's what is it
the fingers? Is this what it is? Is it these 2?
It's like the claws, I guess.
Is it these 2 or is it these 2? It's these 2.
I think it's these 2, right?
So this is like a horned frog.
Yeah.
Oh, do they do this? Is it this?
No, I was just like. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know if this was like a
I think
thing,
kind
of like that. But so it's really just like this.
Let's see. Yeah,
I feel like we need to like this is. It's this that we just hold. So what we do is we just hold it here.
Yeah, I guess so.
Do their fans just hold it there? Like, do the students in like student section just stand up?
They do like anybody else that has a.
They just do it intermittently when like good things happen.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to know because like if they stood up and do it like the whole game, like I would be willing to do that. I could.
Yeah.
I feel like I want to get like the traditions down pat because to somehow influence the outcome here. Okay. Well, then this is
let's go.
I know we always sign off with Roll Tide, but Alabama doesn't have a game this week, and the game we really care about is TCU. So what is TCU? What do the fans say? What's their Roll Tide equivalent?
Go Horned Frogs or something?
Just go Horned Frogs? We got to get this right.
Shoot.
They have like a nonsense cheer like Hotty Toddy.
I don't want to do that.
I'm not gonna do that. It's like riff ram something blah blah.
That's
blah,
crap.
blah, blah.
That's crap. That makes me want to.
They said give them hell TCU.
Give them hell TCU.
Give them hell TCU.
Give them hell TCU. Give them hell TCU.
All right. That's it for us this week. We will we'll see y'all for some kind of bowl preview show. Hopefully it's for a playoff spot and not for, the Orange Bowl or something. I don't know. What game I guess did they go to Cotton if
I guess.
Yeah, I've heard
Georgia
something
would
like
go,
Orange.
or
God,
what
it's
is
gonna
it?
be Orange against UCF, right?
Oh gosh.
yeah. Yeah, but we'll do that. So give them hell TCU
Give
and
them
roll
hell
Tide.
TCU.
All right. See y'all later.